There's sort of this myth about the death penalty that it's reserved for the worst of the worst, and we can sort of precisely figure out who deserves it the most.
We look at the death penalty in this state as a strategic part of our tools to keep New Hampshire safe. If you take that away, those attorney generals don't have that tool anymore to deal with the worst of the worst people.
That's just not how it works in this country. It's really based on, a lot of factors outside of someone's control. Number one, where they live. There are a lot of places, a lot of states where you can't be sentenced to death, a lot of counties that won't sentence you to death. It's also based on how good your attorneys were. It's based on how much money your attorneys had to put together a defense for you.
I wish that people knew how much power prosecutors have in this process. They really have a lot of discretion in choosing who faces the death penalty and who does not, who is going to be executed and who is not.
We're going to give them the death penalty. We're going to have to learn to be tough and stay tough.
In Texas, district attorneys want to be seen as tough on crime, often, especially if they're seeking re-election. And so they'll often pick and choose which cases they think would be helpful to them as they go into their election season.
The amount of evidence that's used to convict a lot of people who are on death row, I think people would be surprised at how little evidence can be used sometimes, or how unreliable that evidence can be that's used to convict people.
Consider the case of Glenn Ford, on death row 5 years. Convicted of a burglary murder by an all-white jury on the basis of circumstantial evidence, he turned down a deal of life in prison. He said he hadn't done it. Ford couldn't pay a lawyer. The court appointed Paul Alexander, a respected civil lawyer who had never tried a criminal case.
If Glenn Ford were to have the best of all possible worlds, he would have had a distinguished, experienced criminal defense attorney.
It is a decision that is diffused among hundreds of actors: the district attorney, the judge, the jurors, the doctors in the execution room. All of those people are playing a part.
Something that is not discussed very much is that, when someone is sentenced to death, that's not the end. That's really the beginning, because appeals go on for years. There's no set time frame of when appeals end.
In order for somebody to be sentenced to death and eventually executed, they go through, sometimes it's decades of litigation. And that's extremely expensive. It amounts to millions and millions of dollars over time. It really ends up being a huge burden on counties and the state in general.
It goes on and on and on, and is traumatic every step of the way.
I wish that people understood that the death penalty is not, it's not kind of an easy fix for, bad people, which is what a lot of people think it is. It's just, this person has committed so many crimes, it's done. A lot of the clients that we have that are in jail tend to have high mental health needs and don't get those needs, which it makes you worse and worse and worse. It's a form of cruelty, and it's inhumane treatment.
The trial of Scott Finetti was, to me, a circus, and I think that other people saw it that way as well.
He had fired his lawyers out of paranoia. He thought they were out to get him. He was under trial for murder. He didn't understand that.
People who are incarcerated have people that love them and care for them. They have families, they have moms, dads, kids, and they have relationships that are really meaningful and really important and should be honored.
When you're on death row, you don't get to not even just touch your family. You don't have any human contact with anyone, any positive human contact. It's a very solitary experience.
I was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death in Texas back in 1992. Like all death row inmates, I was kept in solitary confinement under some of the worst conditions imaginable, with the filth, the food, the total disrespect of human dignity. I lived under the rules of a system that is literally driving me inside of their minds. I survived the torture, but But those 18 years was no way to live.